continue for this team, I think Freddie Kitchens is definitely on the hot seat, and they're going to have to find something else, a different direction for this team. They're going to have to find an offensive-minded coach that can really mold this offense because they've invested all this stuff in Baker. He's shown you a little bit of something. It just seems like they have to find the right coach to get it out of him. So, Eric, we got one last topic here in segment 2, holding penalties. They were the talk really through the Thursday night game of week 3. You had Troy Aikman, Joe Buck kind of just going off on how it was killing the rhythm of the game. The GOAT, Tom Brady, tweeted out that he was no longer watching Thursday Night Football because it was an unwatchable product. Oh, and lo and behold, Saturday, the league held a conference call with officials and said, we need to back off of some of these holding penalties. They went down from 5.7 through Thursday night to only 2.9. That was through Sunday night's game. So, Eric, was it Tom Brady's tweet and all this pressure that finally made this adjustment, or did somebody in the league actually watch their product to see it's pretty damn unwatchable at some points?
The Thursday night game was awful. I have to agree with Tom Brady. I don't agree with him on much, but I have to agree with him on that. I remember texting you and saying, like, I'm probably going to go to bed because this is just hard to deal with when the game is stopped repeatedly over and over and over. There's no rhythm for the teams, and then there's no rhythm as a fan trying to get engaged with it as you're watching it. So I think Brady had a point. The thing I think the league is recognizing is that Brady is just resonating what the fans are already saying. The fans are lighting the league up on Twitter, on social media about how unwatchable these games can get when it's just yellow laundry on the field constantly. Look, I know there has to be rules for these linemen, and there has to be a way to legislate the fact that they can't grab onto each other. And it just changes the way that the line play works in the league. But at the same time, there's got to be a way to let these guys play some of this stuff out. You're seeing a lot of these holding calls that are marginal. Maybe the flag didn't need to be thrown. And I've never been an official in any sport. I understand how difficult it must be. And probably I don't understand how difficult it is at times. But there's got to be a way to improve this. And we saw it on Sunday. As you said, the percentages were significantly down. A lot of the games became watchable. You get a bit more action throughout the offense. So I think the league has recognized that there's a significant problem here. What do? I mean, you have to call the game correctly. Justin, I'm getting annoyed also with these offensive PIs. It's the same thing now. You've got these pass interferences that can go both ways, and now they're reviewing those. Now they're throwing flags. I mean, the Eagles, I think, had 3 or 4 offensive pass interferences called against them. And I'm not saying the calls were right or wrong. I don't know. Indifferent to that, but it stops the action yet again. So you're stopping the action on the line. You're stopping it in the backfield. All of these opportunities for the game to be slowed down.
And with all the scrutiny right now, where you're starting to get more and more states that are adopting mobile sports betting, there's just going to be more scrutiny on these inconsistencies with the league, because these holding calls, it's not just, okay, it backs the team up 10 yards. It's taking points off the board. It's affecting how money is being gambled and how that money is flowing. And that's what gets fans frustrated when you see a long touchdown and then it's like a holding penalty that had nothing to do with the play that brings it back. So I think that's where the league also has to be careful. They're so inconsistent. We saw it week 2 at the end of the Denver game, a roughing the passer penalty, and then the way that they managed the clock at the end of that game. And it changed the outcome. It goes from a Denver win to a Chicago win. Well, that's throwing all the money around, where if people had bet on Denver or took the money line, now it shifts all that money. So even things like that, the league has to be careful on. And I think it just came to a head on Thursday night when you had the premier name in the sport saying the product is unwatchable because every play or every other play, there's a flag, and it's some minuscule thing that didn't even really affect the play. And we continue to just slow the game down more and more and more. And whatever these penalties are, Eric, it's probably a lot more, because you start to look at how many of them get declined based on the situation. So it's even more stoppages in play. This whole notion of being able to challenge pass interference calls, I haven't seen but a handful that have even gotten overturned. It's just another thing that slows the game down. So the league definitely went in the right direction. I thought this week's games were better, but that Thursday night game was, I mean, it was tough to watch anyways, with Titans Jags outside of Minshew and whatever he was going to do, and seeing if anything would play out with Ramsey. Other than that, that was an unwatchable game. What did ESPN do to the league to get their Monday night schedule? Like, they need to send a gift basket or another zero on their contract or something, because the Monday night schedule, Eric, is abominable. I mean, you've got Bengals Steelers coming up in a primetime spot in week 4. Why in God's name, outside of fantasy or gambling, would anyone want to watch that game?
I can only imagine that the league, at least when they did the schedule, didn't think that these would be 2 0-3 teams. At the very worst, they might have thought, okay, we've got a good interdivisional rivalry here. You've had a lot of high-powered hitting and high-powered action between these two teams. Maybe they figure Pittsburgh's at least 2-1 and the Bengals are 1-2. Instead, we have a week 4 matchup on Monday Night Football just to see who gets their first win of the season out of these two teams. And I don't even know which it's going to be, Justin, because you normally would say, yeah, I think Pittsburgh has a good chance at this. Right now, the Bengals have lost, but they've also played everybody pretty tough. So I think the Bengals could go into Pittsburgh and play Mason Rudolph and that team pretty tough. And this could actually be, look, it's not going to be a good game, but it's going to be a good, important matchup for these two teams. But yeah, I mean, this past week in week 3, I thought the Bears defense was just practicing against like a local high school team or something. I don't know what the Redskins were doing, but they thought turnovers was like apple turnovers or something good. That's all they were going to do the whole game, is just turn the ball over, turn the ball over, turn the ball over. Boy, you're right. These Monday night games, these primetime games, some of them are really, really bad. And even when you look forward to some, like when the Patriots played the Steelers on Sunday Night Football, it ended up being a terrible game. So there's a lot of good games in this league. And I think maybe the bigger problem is not so much from the league scheduling, but just on any given week. You don't know which team's going to look good or look bad. And I think that's a good thing for parity in the league, but it's also very, very hard to predict. And you, as a sports bettor with some of these things, must know that there's just no guarantees when it comes to what's going to be a good game and what's going to be a bad game. Talking about Tom Brady and looking at week 4, did we think that the Patriots and Bills were going to be battling it out to see who gets their first loss of the season? I mean, that's actually an interesting game. Now, it's in Buffalo, where the fans apparently, if you've seen Twitter, like to try to blow their faces off with fireworks and stuff. But I mean, these Bills fans, I don't know if they can really handle winning. So it probably would be better off if the Patriots won that game. But I'm actually looking forward to seeing if the Bills can hang. Are they for real at 3-0? That's what I want to know.
I'd much rather see that game on Monday night. And actually, the ESPN could just do like their 7:00 show and just film Bills Mafia just doing wrestling moves on each other and see who sets each other on fire and how many tables get broken. I'd rather watch the parking lot than I would Steelers Bengals on Monday night. So, Eric, I know Monday night's tough because you can't flex it because it's a set date. It's not on Sunday, so it completely changes people's travel schedule. It'd just be nice if they could do something where maybe they did it in 6-week blocks or something, where you could set the first 6 weeks and then sometime in week 2 or 3, you could set the next 6 and give people time to set their travel plans or whatnot and make the adjustments to a Monday night. Because again, it's not like the league has that many primetime spots. Thursday night schedule hasn't been great. And then you turn around, your Monday schedule hasn't been great. It seems like Sunday night's the only ones where you're getting prime matchups and prime teams where you feel like it's going to be good games. I mean, even there was intrigue between the Browns and Rams because it was like how the Rams would travel. Could the Browns bounce back? At least you had some names there.
Names, yeah. I watched it, yeah.
Andy Dalton, I don't want to watch Andy Dalton on any night, much less Monday night.
No, I totally agree. And so you've got the Cowboys and the Saints in that Sunday primetime matchup. I think that's going to be an intriguing game, especially because it's in New Orleans. So how will the Saints handle the Cowboys at home? That's usually where they're better. But the Cowboys are good this year. I mean, they're good defensively. If the Saints continue to struggle, like we just talked about, this could be a game where the Cowboys go 4-0 and the Saints go 2-2. There's not a lot of great games on the week 4 schedule, to be honest. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a quiet week in the NFL. I am intrigued by the Vikings and Bears, both at 2-1. Obviously, being 3-1 in that division is going to be pretty important, especially because we've talked about the Packers are probably going to go to 4-0. So you've got to keep pace, I feel like, if you're the Vikings or the Bears. But other than that, some of the teams that really need to get wins, like the Chargers, they're going to get them because they're playing the Dolphins. So I don't think there's a lot to be excited about this week. But Justin, am I missing anything on this schedule?
No, I just looking through the schedule at a glance. I think the Vikings-Bears game was the only other one that has a little bit of intrigue to it. And you get some kind of weird matchups where you get the NFC versus AFC, where you get like a Lions versus Chiefs, but I think the Lions could get exposed in that matchup. Eric, I think the other thing that interesting to watch this weekend will be NASCAR at the Roval. From what we saw last year, that was one of the craziest races, and the way that thing ended, and it's the fact it's an elimination race for the first round, and then you've got a guy like Eric Jones that looked like he had worked himself into a chance to advance, and now he's got to win it or he's done. So I think there's a lot of intrigue even at the Roval. So I think I have one of my TVs definitely set to the Roval, maybe let the other one run through red zone till Denver comes on, and then I can maybe I can turn that off at halftime and try to keep myself calm as they're on the road to 0-4. But yeah, I think NASCAR at the Roval, Eric, after everything we've seen here through the first two races, it could be pretty wild because NASCAR seems to go on this pace where you get a crazy race, then it kind of dies down, and then it all hell breaks loose again. I think that could happen on Sunday.
Yeah, and I know we were going to maybe talk about this in overtime, but we're running a little bit late on the show. I do have to ask you, though, just in terms of Eric Jones, I mean, here's a guy who he's dealing with a Joe Gibbs Racing team of Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, and Martin Truex Jr., who have all had huge success this year. Obviously, the top three cars. He worked himself up into a position of making the playoffs and then possibly advancing to the next round in the playoffs. And then yet his car fails post-race inspection. He's basically now dropped to the back of the pack so far behind that it's win and get in or anything else and you're out. How do you think he feels as a driver after battling all year long to get to the position he's in? He's basically fourth wheel behind these other three guys, and then this happens to him.
Well, he's got to be just beside himself because they had done everything they needed to do to get back into this thing after having the failure at Vegas. Similar to what we saw Harvick happen to him last year, except it was the middle of the week where he was stripped of his win and points. Eric Jones didn't get a win, but he lost all that point ground that he had finally was able to make up at Richmond. So again, I don't mind NASCAR doing this and keeping things level. Eric, it goes back to where at the final race, 4 cars at Homestead, and one of them has to get pulled off, and it could be the car that's the championship car. And what fans sat and watched for 3-4 hours basically was meaningless because the guy that finished second is now your champion and on stage. Again, I like what NASCAR is trying to do, but I feel like if they're pushing these cars through inspection right before the race, some parts of me feels like, look, if you have people on these teams that are smart enough to figure out how to make parts fail to make the car go faster, if the car passes pre-race inspection, maybe at that point you just have to let it go. Because this whole notion of what we've seen, we didn't see. I mean, can you imagine waking up this morning and being like, well, we actually found that 2 of the players for the Bears actually tested positive for something, so we've stripped them of their points, and Washington actually won the game. You're going to be like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And I think NASCAR trying to do that and legislate that, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I like that it's faster. I like that we're getting the news, an hour after the race or so that a win is official where we know what's going on. But we've seen cars get stripped of wins and place finishes in Xfinity and the trucks. I just worry, Eric, when it's in a spot where it could happen on Sunday in an elimination race. It could happen at Homestead. It could happen where it drastically changes the outcome of the championship run or the champion. What is going to happen then? I think that's the only box that NASCAR has sort of wrapped themselves in at this point.
Yeah, I totally agree. It would be very odd to see other sports being changed like that. But yet I wake up every morning hoping that the Jets being 0-3 is just a bad dream. So maybe at some point the NFL will give me what I want, which is me waking up and they're undefeated and the Patriots are the ones that are 0-3. That's going to do it for episode 306. We appreciate you listening. We hope you have a great weekend. Thank you for listening to this episode of Talk Back. Staying current on sports is our #1 goal, so we drop a new episode each Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or the podcatcher of your choice. For more info about the show, to meet the hosts, or to partner with us on future episodes, please visit TalkbackFanTalk.com. We really enjoy hearing your take on the world of sports, even when you disagree. After all, this show is dedicated to you, the fans. So get direct access to us on Twitter using @TalkbackJustin and @TalkbackEric. Check out our corporate feed on Twitter and Instagram using the handle @TalkbackFanTalk. We hope you have a great week. We'll talk back at you next time.